Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I'm Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and thanks again for being here today. This conversation moves across a lot of territory: diagnosis, recurrence, treatment decisions, fear, work, identity, and what it takes to keep going and showing up. And this is intentional. Because survivorship isn't linear. It doesn't follow a neat outline. It's layered, messy, and deeply human. And especially when cancer comes back, it asks us to live, work, and make decisions without ever really feeling done. This episode isn't about one moment or one decision. It's about what it's like to keep showing up for yourself after a breast cancer diagnosis, especially when the ground keeps shifting. My guest today is Teresa Baglietto, and she understands this quite deeply. Teresa is a 4-time cancer survivor, author of The Ripple Effect, and host of the In Shock podcast. For more than 25 years, she has built a successful career in tech sales while navigating not only cancer, but other life-altering experiences, including stroke, brain aneurysm, financial setbacks, a divorce, and a near-death childbirth experience. Through it all, Teresa has become a powerful storyteller and speaker, helping people make sense of the moments that shake us and remind us that strength isn't something we're born with. It's something we build. In this episode, Teresa and I talk honestly about breast cancer recurrence after having a mastectomy, fear of what comes next, and how to keep moving forward when certainty is no longer available, but life still is. Welcome to the conversation. I'm excited to be on the show. It's a real honor to be joining a show like yours with so many people that have been affected by breast cancer. I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. As you mentioned, I'm an author. I'm new to the marketplace. My book was released on December 1st. It's called The Ripple Effect. Thanks. And I also work a full-time job in corporate America and do a lot of other things in between, depending on what kind of crosses my path. But that's a little bit about who I am and my background. Thank you for sharing that. How do we balance cancer and career? Yeah. So let's see, where do we begin the journey? It was 2013 when I was diagnosed, but I'm going to back up just a little bit because it was really in 2012, around the holidays, when I started to notice my left breast was much bigger than my right breast. And I was in my mid-40s and I thought, maybe this is what menopause looks like. I have no idea. I'm just going to kind of keep going with it. I had an appointment with my OBGYN set for January. I was traveling a ton for my job at the time. I came very close to canceling that appointment because of the sheer volume of traveling that I was doing. And my doctor was in a town about 2 hours away. And so thinking of making that drive on top of just being burnt out, I thought, I don't really need to go to the doctor. This is an annual exam. At that time, they were doing annual exams. So I started to examine my own breast and I felt a block of cement in my breast. And I thought, am I imagining this? Is this a cyst? I've had, cystic breast. I've never felt anything quite this hard. So I started to ask some of my girlfriends, can you check this out? Are you feeling what I'm feeling? Or am I just so burnt out that I'm imagining this? And everybody was like, oh my God. And it got to a point where at Christmas parties, girlfriends were coming up because at that point it was like, what is this? And we didn't really talk about what if it's cancer. It was more about that's a really strange thing to have to feel so hard. So, needless to say, I went to my appointment. One of the first questions they always ask you when they haven't seen you in a while is there anything new that we need to talk about? Any concerns that you have? And I said, I think I might be in menopause. And he said, why do you think that? And I said, well, look at my breasts. This one's so much bigger. And he said, I see that. Why don't we go ahead and do a quick exam? And he also delivered my boys. And so I saw his face change immediately. And I said, is this something we need to be concerned about? He said, is something we need to have checked out.
And so this is when he was doing like a physical exam of your breast and felt that cement piece.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he said, you should probably go down to radiology and ask for an MRI or, my God, what are they called? How come I can't think of it right now?
Like the mammograms
A
or ultrasounds?
mammogram, right. When was the last time you had one? And I said, well, I was supposed to have one a year ago. I blew it off. I blew the one off before that. So it's been 3 years. And my mother had breast cancer. My mother's mother had breast cancer. My father passed away from colon cancer. So I was just on the track to get checked regularly because of family history. There was no genetic test that I had had at that time to determine if I had been carrying any BRCA genes. So there's a lot of advocacy that goes between the time that he said, this is something we should have checked, and the time that I was diagnosed. I think that could take up this entire podcast. So I don't necessarily want to go there, but I can if you want me to.
No, thank you for that. And I would love to just even like linger a little bit on how you found this lump initially. Has it been there this whole time? Did you wake up one morning and you just noticed it? Or was it because your body was changing?
If memory serves me right, it did feel like it showed up suddenly, but I was kind of keeping my own eye on it, right? Because it was probably November-ish when I started to notice the change in the size of my left breast versus my right breast. And it was really December when it was confirmed by friends, like, yeah, there is something in there. And that time, and I heard this on one of your podcasts too, people weren't talking about what does cancer feel like. And nobody was ever saying it feels like it's a solid block of cement. People would say, oh, it's a lump in your breast. Well, can you define what lump is? Because nobody had really talked about what does a lump feel like or what does that actually mean? And so that's why I think none of us went to, this must be cancer. If my friends thought it, they never said it out loud. But it was, take a good knock on a door, a desk, a wall, the ground, cement. That's exactly what I felt in my breast at that time. So, I went in for the mammogram. She had said, do you see what we see on the screen? Or do you feel what we see on the screen? And I said, yes, I do feel what you are seeing on the screen. So she left the room. They immediately took me into the ultrasound room. The room was very dark. It was a colorful ultrasound. I was looking at the screen and saw all kinds of colors. It looked like, some psychedelic scene that I was looking at. She disappeared and came back with doctor. And the doctor looked at it. Nobody was saying any words, but I thought something's going on here. Again, I'm not sure what's going on, but something's going on. And she said, we want to do a biopsy today. And that's when my heart rate started to speed up a little bit. And she said, we're going to give you a couple of hours. I see that you have a friend with you in the waiting room. I would recommend going and having lunch. And by the time you're done and come back, we'll be ready for you. And you may want to have like a little glass of wine. And I thought, okay, I have a feeling I know what's up. No one's going to say it because they can at this point, right?
No, they can't. No.
And I didn't even have the nerve to say, what do we think it is? Instead, it was, yep, I'm going to follow your orders. I'm grabbing my girlfriend. And I was kind of shaking uncontrollably because I guess I was in shock over
How did you know to
something.
bring a girlfriend with you to your appointment in the first place?
It's just something that I wanted to do. A lot of it had to do with the advocacy piece and really get into the details around. It was like, I need somebody by my side to march with me through this. So if there's going to be any battles, I've got somebody to help me with this battle because none of this was really scheduled at that time. They were trying to do the free willy, like, yeah, you just show up and you can walk in and you can get a mammogram, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually wasn't the truth. I had a lot of bumps in the road to get to that day where I actually was able to have the mammogram. So we left the hospital. I was starting to cry just because I felt like, I think I know what they're going to say. So we get to the restaurant, we belly up at the bar, and I have zero appetite in anticipation of what's coming. We had our liquid lunch with a brief salad to go with it and headed back to the hospital. They were ready for me to go. Massive TV screen on the wall so I could see everything, and I'm not afraid of needles. The needle was quite long for the biopsy. I watched everything happen, and I could see where they were taking a little bite out of this tumor. And they said, we'll call you in a couple of days. And they had a lot of female nurses in the room at that time. That also felt like an indication that There's something serious going on. There might be some student nurses in here, and this is an opportunity for them to see this is what breast cancer looks like. Again, I asked no questions. I think I was in a little bit of denial and hope that whatever this is, maybe it's not what we think it is. But sure enough, bright and early the next morning, and remember, well, you probably won't remember because we haven't talked about it. This was my second cancer diagnosis. I had had lip cancer before. So this phone call was all too familiar. Hi, is this a good time for you? Are you alone? Is there anybody around? And I thought, oh my God, just cut
Oh,
to the
gee.
chase. I already know what's going on. And when they tell you you have cancer, and I've been told 4 times, you're in shock. You cannot hear anything after that. Sure, there was words of, there's some phone calls that are going to come in, but your mind has traveled somewhere else. You're numb, you're paralyzed. All you're thinking about is, I'm going to have to start planning my funeral. Because this was also during a time in 2013 when people weren't surviving cancer as much as they are today. And people are actually living with terminal cancer now. So I was scared shitless when that news came because I had 3 little boys and I was a
Wow.
divorced mom. And so I thought, oh my God.
So much going through your mind, and your story resonates so deeply with me. I had a very similar experience in 2016. Again, had to advocate a whole story. We can have a whole separate podcast about that, maybe over
We'll do that
drinks.
over coffee.
Yeah, exactly. But the same thing, they actually rushed me in for my mammogram the same day. I noticed actually dimpling was the symptom that I saw. I saw that one breast was shrinking and that there was dimpling happening.
Interesting.
I was very active at the time, worked out all the time. I'm like in the gym, doing my weights and, all the great things and wearing tight fitting clothes. And I literally was like at the gym, I was like, my pectoral muscles aren't developing at the same rate. Like, things are just looking a little different. And same, I told my husband and my boyfriend at the time, my husband now, but it was like, do you see this? Do I see this? Like, am I making things up? Like, is it a shadow? Like, who knows what dimpling is, right? Like, breasts just look different sometimes. And so
Yeah.
breast cancer was not part of my vocabulary. It was not on my mind. It's not something I quickly thought was going to happen. So similarly, it sounds like, we're just going through what our doctors are telling us to do. And I remember telling my employer, okay, I have a mammogram. I have my first mammogram because I was diagnosed under 40. So I'm like, oh, big day for me. Like, I have my first mammogram today, but I'll be in by 10:30, 11 o'clock at the latest, right?
Yeah.
And I had the mammogram, and then they asked me, and I went by myself because I was like, I literally thought this was going to rule out cancer. Maybe something's in my head. I don't know what's going on. So I went by myself. Then they said, what's your day like? We would love to squeeze you in during lunch and do a biopsy. And that's when I called my husband and was like, I'm going to cancel work. I'm going to take a sick day. And can you get down here because they want to do a biopsy? And that's when things started to feel very real. I remember having to sign my life away on in case there's a punctured lung. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Scary.
Right? And I'm like, what is this avalanche that is about to happen? And
Right.
so, I just empathize with you and then all of our listeners who have to navigate this uncertainty. And while our minds might be saying, okay, how do I prepare for this if this is cancer? There is a little bit of a waiting period of well, maybe it comes back benign, or maybe, there's so many questions. How do you navigate those moments? And you were still working at the time. So can I ask you, you had the biopsy, and then who do you tell? As you had your friend with you,
Your
but how do you bring
Yeah.
this up?
It's interesting because I heard your podcast about your reaction and kind of approach to, let's just call it everybody else, but your boyfriend at the time, now husband. I was the opposite. I shouted it out to the world, called as many friends, because I was also going through a divorce. And I called as many friends as I possibly could and wanted everybody to know. And I'm not sure I did it consciously, but it was just, holy Moses, I've got breast cancer and I'm going to die. And I recently spoke to a doctor. She was on my podcast. I'm going to sidetrack just for a second.
Absolutely.
One of the things that she does is she helps people who are either living with cancer, dealing with cancer, that don't have terminal cancer, kind of get your mind straight so that you can make those hard decisions about surgery, the type of treatment that you're going to have. Because not everybody has somebody or has another pair of listening ears to help with those decisions. And what we learned is that if anybody has a story like mine, which was my father got diagnosed with cancer and died, and my mother later did pass away from ovarian cancer on top of the breast cancer. So I have a story in my mind that if you have cancer, you die. That's all I know. And it's my own story that I've created. But the reality is, I've had cancer 4 times and I'm not dead. I'm here today. We're talking. And
Yes.
so it's about shifting the mind. And the truth there are more people living today with terminal cancer than there ever have been, ever. And I think that's so important. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it will shock you when you get the news. There's no denying that. But hopefully, most people aren't going to a place that I went to, which was I had already buried myself 6 feet under when I was diagnosed. It was like, woo, I got to tell everybody because I don't know how long I'm going to be around. And the funny thing about that is when you get diagnosed, you really don't have all the information. All you know in that moment is that you have cancer. And it's when you go in for your follow-up appointment that you get fully educated on here's what we know today. And even still, we won't have all the information until you have surgery and we look at your lymph nodes, and then we'll have the full story. So we all do this no matter what the situation, but especially with cancer, we make our own conclusions before we even have all the information. So if anyone's listening who's new to this, somehow take some deep breaths and slow your thought process because I didn't have all my information until my first surgery, which was 3 months after my diagnosis. And it was after they checked the lymph nodes and I woke up from surgery that we learned it wasn't as extensive as they thought, but I was stage 3. So it's so important to try and not get ahead of ourselves, right?
Which is so hard. I think that's a human instinct,
Yeah.
maybe even a coping mechanism. I'm so glad you're bringing this up because we're clamoring for information. And
Right. Yeah. And I brought many friends with me to my appointments, again, because I didn't have a husband at the time. I just thought, I'm not going to be able to hear everything that they say. Some appointments, I had a notebook with me and was taking notes. I think that's super important. But when you're the patient and you're ingesting all this information, you could potentially miss something because either you're writing it down or you have a moment of maybe a mini tremor shock where you kind of miss what they said because you're thinking about the last thing that they said. So it was so helpful to have friends come, and it wasn't always the same friends. So I had a variety of
that's
listening
great.
ears, but it was huge to have that support system along the way.
Hypophosphatemia is often underrecognized, but the downstream consequences, such as osteomalacia, fractures, and functional decline, can be substantial. To our listeners, the single most important actionable message today is to check aphosphate. It's not on the typical chem panel, so you have to order it when the story fits.
Yeah.
Can I jump ahead? You had breast cancer and then you got diagnosed 2 more times. What was the sequence of the next diagnoses?
The next diagnosis was a recurrence. And here's what's shocking about that is when they sit down with you when I had my first diagnosis and they give you the options, you could have a lumpectomy, you could do a bilateral mastectomy, which is removing both breasts. You could take fat from your back. All these things. And you're sitting there going, I don't really know what to do. My grandmother took one breast off. My mother took, only a bite out of hers. And they said, with your history, we recommend a bilateral mastectomy. And I thought, God, that sounds so archaic. Isn't there something else? You would think we're past tearing our breasts off, right? That's what my reaction was at the time. And I decided to go the extreme route. They said the chances of recurrence are much slimmer if you do that. And if there was a reoccurrence, it might come into the other breast. Just because we've operated on this one doesn't mean it's not going to jump over to the other side. So I thought, you know what? Let's just go all out. I don't want to deal with this ever again. And so here it was, 2018. I'm from California. I was in California at the time, and I was taking my pajamas off and I felt a lump. And I've got implants in my breasts now, right? I don't have any of my own breasts left from that surgery. And I was like, oh God, what is that? Again, walked in the kitchen, asked my girlfriend, do you feel what I feel? Yes, I feel what you feel. So I got in touch with, because my surgery was all in California at that time.
Okay.
I'd created a friendship with my breast surgeon. So I called her, and I was living on the East Coast at the time, and said, I just felt this thing. It doesn't feel like a rock. Maybe it does. I don't know, but I felt this thing and I don't know what it is. And she said, sometimes the breast implants can create these, she had a word for it, things. I would go get checked. So again, here we are. Normally, a mammogram's not going to be the right path when you've had both your breasts removed. But this doctor at the time said, I still want to try it with you and see what we can see. It's the best way for us to see if you have a recurrence. If it doesn't work, we'll try ultrasound, we'll try MRI, blah, blah, blah. So lo and behold, boom. He said, yep, we see what you feel. We're going to have to do a biopsy.
On the mammogram.
On the mammogram. So they
Wow.
did the biopsy.
And where did you feel it? Did you feel it in your like not in your
On
lymph
the
nodes, but still on the breast, like still on like the
Yeah,
tissue?
it's still on, it's on the
Yeah.
implant at this point, right?
Yeah.
And so we went from mammogram to biopsy. It was like, man, do I know this walk? I have been down this walk. And for some reason, it was scarier. Maybe because, we all have chances to reflect. I may have thought this is really it, gets it a second time and makes it through. And maybe it's in other places of my body. So I went into a very effed up place.
Well, and
And
especially thinking about your timeline too between 2013 and 2018, I think a lot of us hold on to some of these milestones of getting to like a 3-year mark or a 5-year mark, et cetera. You're staying attuned with your body, and this all happens again.
It all happens again. So they confirmed it was cancer. Now I'm in the Boston area. So I go straight to Mass General Hospital, and I bring a giant book of all my past history with me, because now I'm like, no, we're going to get every test under the sun. I want to know if it's anywhere else. Like, I am not going to do this again. This is the last time. Please make this the last time, right? I have paid the piper. And my boyfriend was like, you kind of need to just go in and take it easy, because you've got your guns loaded, and let's just hear what they have to say. Maybe they're going to come at this very differently. And they did. She was lovely. She held my hand the whole time. I think I was so fired up, I couldn't be emotional and cry. And they ran every test under the sun without me asking. So I felt like I had hands. I had another surgery, and what they call it is excising, because I didn't have any breast tissue. What are you really going to take out, right? Sure, there's always a little bit of breast tissue left. They can never scrape it all off the skin. So the excising is just removing the tumor and all the margins around it. But it was all over my chest wall. And so I had radiation for 3 months. We moved to Boston, lived there for 3 months. I went in for treatment 5 to 6 days a week. I thought I got off the hook because I don't have to have chemo. And it was brutal. There was no off the hook. Destroyed me physically and mentally. And that's because of the length of time that I had to go in for it. But it was just a very different experience. And at the end of it, almost to kind of where you were going with your story is, all right, this is the last treatment. You're done. You're no longer in our care. And tell me if you agree with this, but you spend a lot of time with your doctors. You get to know them. They almost become your friends through this entire process to a degree. You're not doing anything with them necessarily or having wine or conversations with them, but you're seeing them on a very regular basis. And all of a sudden, the reality of you're done. Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to make sure you don't have cancer anymore? Where's the treatment going? So I fell apart and she rolled up her chair and said, I need to spend some time with you. What's going on here? So lo and behold, it was, I'm afraid I'm going to get it again
Of
because
course.
now
A very
treatment's
real,
over.
rational fear. I
Right.
mean,
Like you almost feel like you need to actively be doing something to prevent it in
mhm.
order to feel like you're being productive against preventing cancer. And so she said, I want you to go and celebrate that you do not have cancer any longer. It's gone. And I want you to go celebrate with your friends and go do something you've never done before. It can be a vacation. It could be you and your significant other, you and your friends, but do something besides a dinner. So we went to wine country with a bunch of friends and had the most emotional celebration. It was absolutely beautiful. We all toasted, this is it. It's never going to happen again. And, knock on my desk. I'm 6 years out now from that diagnosis, and I feel like we took care of it. More
Yeah.
confident now than before, but like you, every appointment that I go in for, no matter what it is, oh, I have this weird cough. Oh my God, I have lung cancer. Right?
Completely. How does your mind not go there? We've been like hardwired.
Right.
So, in terms of context, so the first time when you got diagnosed, you just had surgery. You did not have radiation or chemotherapy. And then the second time you removed the tumor and then had radiation. I had a third follow up, just to, like put the timing in. So, what stage is this? So, because it's on the chest wall, how does that get staged?
They staged it at a stage 2, so it's not like it was because it wasn't in the lymph nodes that changed the staging because the lymph nodes again. So they're like, ironically, this is much different than your last one. Your last one was a much more aggressive and much bigger tumor, but it probably had been there for a longer time and just decided to show its ugly self, right? But I was going to say something about the chemo treatment. So chemotherapy was an option for me the first time around. At that time, a new test had come out. It was called the Oncotype DX test, where they ship your tumor off to this lab. They take the tumor and they actually put chemotherapy treatment on the tumor itself. And my tumor didn't respond at all. So when the oncology team said, it's optional for you, we don't necessarily believe that it's going to make a difference, but if you want to do it for peace of mind, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, it's such a unique story. I appreciate you sharing all of this with me and with our listeners as well.
The first breast cancer versus the second breast cancer was different. When they said it's all over your chest wall, I immediately thought it's in my lungs.
Of course.
Right.
Why wouldn't you think that? Of course.
Right.
Or your
Yeah.
bones, right? Your sternum, like everything right there.
And so I didn't have to push for all the tests because, again, they did every test to make sure that it wasn't anywhere else in the body. So that was important to me to have that. But I still was like, how do they know for sure? Right. Because I was shocked that it came back. And we had done everything that you're supposed to do, right? Some people might say, well, maybe if you did that chemo, it wouldn't have come back or
You can't do
whatever.
that. No, what
I
if?
went on tamoxifen, and that is a very different podcast and a story in itself. But I was on tamoxifen for a period of time, not the entire time. And I'm no longer taking that. I had an allergic reaction.
Mm,
I had 3 strokes on it,
wow.
and I had a craniotomy for 2 brain aneurysms. So in my medical file, I'm very allergic to tamoxifen. And I just decided personally for myself, I am an advocate of taking traditional treatment courses when you have cancer, but integrating that with some other things, which I've heard you talk about before too.
Absolutely.
And I did that as well. But because I felt like, oh my God, this treatment is now trying to kill me, and I'm trying to stay alive after tearing off my breasts. And I just decided, and my doctor didn't agree with me for a very long time, I'm not going to take a drug because I don't want that to be the thing that takes my life. And I didn't want to risk it. And there was plenty of clinical studies to try different things. And I just was scared straight. I mean, I had my whole skull opened up and I was like, no, thank you. I'm done.
Everyone's decision is their own decision, and to take agency of that.
Mm.
And to your point too, we talk a lot about this in our podcast and in our communities. We are definitely the proponents of here's the standard of care or explore clinical trials. Here are a lot of great opportunities. I just got back from the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, SABCS. I literally was talking to my new oncologist today and was like, they are releasing data that these new drugs are better than the drugs I was on. Like,
Believe that.
better than the aromatase inhibitors, better than tamoxifen. Like, give me that now.
I know.
He's like, Laura, no, like you're good. Like you went through your treatment. I was like, I know, but this stuff is better. Like, give it to me.
Yeah,
He's like, you're
exactly.
crazy. Like, absolutely not. No. But, it's so that's the best thing about science is that, more stuff is coming out and treatments are getting better. And how you started this conversation is that
Yep.
people are living longer, which is fantastic. But then what is that quality of life that we're also trying to balance? And how can we bring in integrative therapies to complement side effects or to complement our own healing? Because again, back to that agency piece, you want to feel like you're taking ownership of your cancer. My community knows this about me. I'm Italian. Like I drink wine. I'm not giving up the wine. Other
Right.
people are like,
I'm
wine
with you,
causes
sister.
cancer. And I'm like, wine, I don't care. Like we have to have our vices and I've
That's
chosen
right.
mine. And
Yeah.
so, you have to just feel comfortable whether you're taking tamoxifen, staying on treatment, not changing treatment, drinking the wine, having the cookies. Like, it's that balance. And at the end of the day, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm making the best decision for me and I'm owning that decision, then that's the right decision.
I've got plenty of friends on a variety of medications who've had or breast cancer. Some of them are on tamoxifen, and they're not having any issues. So this certainly isn't to say that that's a drug that can cause problems. My body just reacted to it in a bad way, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this was 2018. You had your radiation, and today, like, you're feeling good from a breast
Feeling
cancer
great.
perspective?
Yeah. So I had my last surgery in September. I obviously had breast implants after the first diagnosis. They were already in there, and having 3 months of radiation on the implants creates another problem, right? It's kind of like the domino effect. And so I got capsular contracture on my left breast. And for those that are listening, what that is think of a tennis ball. If you've ever cut open a tennis ball's furry and hard on the outside, but if you slice it open, it's encasing or encompassing the ball itself, right? And you can think of the capsule that was encompassing my implant like a tennis ball, like the fuzzy tennis ball. It was hard as a rock, my entire breast. It shifted up into my clavicle area towards the end. And so we decided to take the implants out and replace them with new ones. That's one of the options. And it has been fantastic. Now, I was very scared going into that surgery. And I remember sitting with one of my girlfriends and I said, I'm scared shitless. Like, what if when they take out the implants, they see like cancer everywhere? And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, your chest is like a desert now. You had so much radiation in there. A plant couldn't even survive in there. She's like, think of it that way. It's just dirt. There's no water moisturizing the dirt. It is just dirt. It's a desert. There's no way they're going to find anything. And the day of surgery, she said, do you have any concerns? And I was like, this is what I'm worried about. I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud. And she said it's natural for somebody who's had breast cancer twice to feel that way. We don't anticipate seeing anything. We've done enough images to determine there's nothing in there other than the implant. So you'll be fine. And it all came out just fine. So it's
That's
all
good.
good. So feeling great.
Man. Yes.
Yeah.
And so taking the snapshot of the years that you've been navigating a cancer diagnosis, and then also the challenges of being on tamoxifen and all of the other hardships, how has that impacted your career and your life and your outlook overall?
Hmm.
Big question. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great question. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm trying to keep it more direct. I think it's given me perspective to be more purposeful in my life. And The truth is, we never know when a life-changing moment is going to come, right? Life throws curveballs. We all know that, especially those of us who have gone through something like this. And there's many curveballs, different types out there. But it makes you think about what you're doing with your life. And I'm at a point where I'm entering into that age group that starts to think about retirement. And that sounds lovely, but it's not something I'm interested in. And so, kind of what you were talking about in the beginning of this podcast is, what's next? And I think you and I both have taken something that was life changing, but shocking to us, right? That's being diagnosed with cancer and turning it into something purposeful. We have these podcasts. I've written a book. I've, made some other changes in my life. And the what's next for me is really this brand that I'm trying to build. It's still evolving. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's to bring something to people that gives them some education, especially for listeners who may be going through something that you and I've been through or just starting their journey. And more importantly, inspiring people with these stories because it is very scary. And I think what we don't talk about is, well, what actually got you through? What were the things that you leaned into? And that's something that I talk about in my book as well, because everyone talks about resilient. You're resilient. I'm resilient. We survived. We made it through. No matter how hard, sad, awful it was in the moments, because there was many of those moments where we wished it went away. But what are the things that you do when you're in those moments? How can you make those moments better? And I want to be able to share that with others. And a lot of them are what I would call obvious, but when you're in it, you're not thinking straight. And so it's nice to know, what did she do that she's doing so great now? And what about Laura? What did she do? They're both smiling and they look happier than ever. Those are the things I like to share to inspire people to help them. So a more meaningful next thing.
You reference your podcast and your book. So your podcast is called In Shock.
It is.
Tell me a little bit more about that. When did you launch your podcast? And tell me, again, where listeners can find it and what topics you cover.
Yeah. So In Shock has been around for 12 months now. Exciting. Made it through the first year. And it's really it's talking about a variety of topics about those hard moments and how to overcome them. And those topics cover everything from cancer to financial struggles, divorce, any life-threatening health issues, and everything in between, because not all of us cope the same way. You and I have had something really big happen to us. And I have friends who've had what I might think is something small impact their life, but it feels of magnitude to them. And so we talk about that stuff too. I even get into like a terrible UTI and what that's. It's not necessarily to talk only about cancer, but there's certainly guests on my show. We talk about cancer. It's a big topic. There's a lot to share. We all have different experiences. And the book, The Ripple Effect, is really starting from my childhood when I lost my father at age 10 to colon cancer, all the way through losing my mother through ovarian cancer, and those key things that I leaned into that helped shape who the person I am today is.
Beautiful. And you said that your book is currently available. So where can people find that?
You can find it on Amazon, and I would recommend pulling it up by my name because, you can't trademark a book title, but the book title is The Ripple Effect. If you look that up on Amazon, you're going to find a lot of books under that title. So just search under Teresa without an H, and my last name is Baglietto.
Fantastic. You talk about how do we get through it? What are some of the tidbits or practices that got you through it? Can you leave me and my listeners with what was one element that got you through some of this hardship?
Yeah, I'll share one that not many people talk about. You and I share some of the same ones. Again, just kind of hearing some of the stories that you've shared. I think having a plan makes a huge difference. And let's give an example. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer the first time in 2012, and it was a 12-month journey to the very end of my last surgery. If I didn't have something that I hadn't written down, showing me the path forward that may have changed my optimism and the way that I felt about the diagnosis itself. It's almost like a distraction, but it's not meant to be a distraction. Instead, it's have a plan, right? And as part of my career in corporate America, we always work with plans and we work backwards. So backwards would be, all right, my last surgery is in January. You're sitting down December. You're sitting with your doctor in January. What are all the things that I have to go through, doctor, to get to December? Because they don't share that with you. They might say,
No, it's
okay,
like day by day, right? It's like the next 24 hours. How do
yeah,
I get through the next 24
exactly.
hours?
Yeah. And when she told me all of that, I was in shock because I thought, oh my God, it's going to be 12 months before I'm done with this. So there was a little bit of maybe, little depression at that point
Of
because it
course.
felt like forever. But once I put it down on paper, it was like, and don't take this the wrong way because it's not the same, but you know, when you have something to look forward to, like a vacation, you've planned it, it's out there, you know, it's out there and you're excited. This is just something that is planned, it's out there, you know, when the end is coming, and it can make such a big difference on the way that you think about it.
Yes. Okay, what do I have to do in the next week? What do I have to do in the next, month or a couple of months? How can I feel my healthiest, cancer aside, going into my surgery so that I have the best chance of recovery afterwards?
Yeah,
That plan is really important.
it really is. Yeah, I love that.
Well, Teresa, I loved this conversation. I definitely want to have you come back. I want to talk about advocacy. I want to talk about menopause. I want to talk about overcoming life challenges. So we will definitely continue this conversation. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I'll just leave with maybe a thought, especially for those going through it. You said something that I absolutely loved on one of your podcasts, and it's about the cancer journey. And not everybody is going to join us on the journey. Maybe some of your best friends don't join you on that journey. And we shouldn't take that personally. Some people just don't know how to be there for you during certain moments in your life, even though it might feel like this could be it for me. You should be here. You know, be kind to yourself, be kind to your friends, because other people that you don't even know are going to come forward and likely turn into one of your best friends, if not many of your best friends, through this entire journey. Because you said it as well, Laura. I had so many people sending me notes on Facebook, sending me emails, mailing me books, never met in my life, who were connected to people that I knew that wanted to help in some way. And there's nothing more fulfilling than that when you're going through something that's scaring lights out of you.
And I have to say, for people who are listening and they don't know what to do for someone who's been diagnosed, people will probably have an opinion about this, but you can't really do anything wrong. I remember getting gifts that I was like, how did they know to send this to me? How did
Yeah.
they know that I needed like a water bottle or a blanket or the fuzzy sock? Like,
Yeah.
it was like the thought. It was like, it didn't really matter what showed up in the package. I was like, oh my God, these people were so thoughtful that, getting a pair of sweatpants to wear to go to the infusion center. I was like, oh my God, thank you so much.
Right, exactly. I got a little magic wand. It's not even something like a charm that you'd wear, but it was a little magic wand to wave in those moments when it got really hard. I was like, this is the cutest thing ever.
Yes,
So that's a valid point. I love that.
absolutely. Teresa, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you for taking the time to share your story and going really in-depth questions that I was asking, just understanding not only how the science of medicine has changed since you and I both have been diagnosed in 2012, 2013, 2016, et cetera, how things have changed. And then confronting the fact that we have fear of recurrence, but you are here as a testament to say, yes, it has happened. You've had breast cancer twice, as well as 2 other types of cancers that you've overcome. And you're here to let the world know, not today, life.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation. You are a doll.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org. and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400 plus programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.